Conversations like these are brought to you by our members at patreon.com/dailydetroit, and a special thanks to Jerry Mangona for supporting our coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference. Hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Thursday, June 9th, 2022, and today we're going to talk about sewage. Yeah, all that. That kind of thing that you kind of flush and it just kind of goes away. It's even more important now with the number of floods that we've had, all the issues in our region. So I wanted to talk to somebody who has always impressed me with their practical view about things. Candice Miller is the Macomb County Public Works Commissioner, and she has a unique position because, yes, there's Detroit and everything kind of flows that way. But Macomb County has so much area with the shores of Lake St. Clair, our waterways, the Great Lakes, and there's a lot of stuff that goes from Oakland to Macomb. And let's be honest, nature does not care about our county or city lines, and it's all tied together. Let's start that conversation. Joining me at the table, Candice Miller, Macomb County Public Works Commissioner. You have such an interesting job to me because at the end of the day, like, you deal with all of our stuff.
Literally.
Yes, literally. And so there's a number of topics that we can touch on. And I guess we'll just kind of get started with storms and sewage management. You know, right now we're thinking, geez, pandemic, we lose all of our time, but we're a year away from that giant rainstorm, a rainstorm that, from talking to a number of people on the show over the last few months, this is the kind of thing we're going to see more of going forward. Is that your sense as well?
I think that's absolutely right. In fact, I don't know if it's climate change or what is happening, but something's happening where the amount of rains that we are getting, the level of intensity is so much more, and it is impacting what is very antiquated, undersized, underground infrastructure. And so, as you're right, you just mentioned, it's just a year ago we had all that tremendous, catastrophic flooding. The city of Detroit, particularly in the eastern portion of the city, flooded. The Grosse Pointes were all flooding. We, in Macomb County, in the St. Clair Shores area, are at what we call the upstream end of that pipe that runs down Jefferson. And we did not flood, although we couldn't send any more of our flow down to Connor Creek and some of the areas down there we needed to. But because of what we did, we probably saved about 4,000 homes, basements, from flooding in St. Clair Shores. But, right now, we're about to build a $45 million new pump station, a lot of cash, and it's probably a little more expensive than it needs to be, but we're going to spend the money. Two things. First of all, we've not built a pump station there since 1968, talking about old infrastructure. Secondly, we're going to put an enormous generator there, because guess what happens when it storms? The power goes out. And then the expressways were all flooded. And, in southeast Michigan, that's where all the underpasses are, that all flooded, so many of them along the expressways. Just think about what the negative economic impact that was. For 10 days, we weren't able to transit, whether residential, of course, or citizens, but the businesses transiting goods and services. It was devastating.
And the very personal impact, whether your car got stuck in it or streets or all those other things. You mentioned the first pump station since 1968. All I can think to myself is that I know how much things have changed in Macomb County, even in my lifetime, and I wasn't around in 1968. So I can only imagine the more people that are there. How key is it to do these kind of investments, and are we going to need to do more?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
First of all, it is absolutely key. And, I think, quite frankly, the elected officials in the communities, wherever you're at, they have to have the political will to address these issues, because in some ways, the amount of resources that are necessary are so overwhelming that we just let it go on the next year, the next generation, or whatever, because we deal with something else that might be easier to fix. You can't be overwhelmed by it, first of all. You have to, my view on it is sort of like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. So you have to keep working away at this. I mentioned that pump station, but we are putting, $100 million into our interceptor. And 4 days before I walked into this office, we had the largest infrastructure disaster in Michigan's history, where we had houses on 15 Mile Road literally falling into sinkholes.
Yeah.
So, we're now relining different parts of this pipe that need to be fixed. And again, when we do this, it's not just in the immediacy, but we're looking generationally, because we now bid everything out. which did not happen in the past, let me just tell you. It's all very transparent. We have a qualification committee that looks at the bids, and the last thing we actually look at is cost, which sounds a little odd because you're always thinking, oh, I'm going to do it as cheap as I can. But you need the right product. So we're buying the most expensive product actually known to man on the planet right now. But this stuff is going to last, I mean, you can't really say forever, I guess. I don't know how long that is, but like forever. And so generationally, our kids, our grandchildren won't be left holding the bag.
Well, it's good to hear somebody, an elected official, looking at this from a legacy perspective and making something that we can be proud of. Now, you're at the Mackinac Policy Conference. This is really about regional conversations. This all ties together regionally because we are in one watershed. We are in all these different things. What are some of the key things you're looking for here? And from like regional stakeholders, like what would help make things better in your mind? A couple of key action areas.
First of all, like for our department, we've defined our vision as quality of life equals water quality. And I mean, listen, we're in the blue economy, right? Whether you live on the Clinton River or Lake St. Clair or the Detroit River, or you're up here in Mackinac Island, my gosh, surrounded by all this water. So we need to think about water quality, the kinds of things that we all need to do, particularly in Southeast Michigan, where we have a lot of water quality issues. And then we also think a part of our vision is how can we be a critical component of economic prosperity? And much of what we're doing with protecting our underground, investing in our underground infrastructure and other kinds of things, I think all leads itself to economic prosperity because, as we just said, think about the negative economic impact if we don't take care of these things. It's real.
Yeah. So, you know, when we're talking about things like combined sewer overflows, and I mean, that's a long-term, but it's something that plagues not just Macomb County, but areas. I mean, we had Josh Elling on from Jefferson East. Mm-hmm. Like, this is all tied together. What are some ways we could address that? And what are some ways you're working to address that?
This is something that has been going on for generations, quite frankly, and certainly decades anyway. And it's really was a principal impetus for me even running for this job because I just thought, we do not have to live this way, okay? We can fix this. Again, you have to have a political will. You have to try to figure out where you're going to get the resources. You have to bring the people along so that they understand what the issue is, what the problem is, and why we have to invest. And I'm just going to tell you, certainly in Macomb County, we're committed to reducing, hopefully eventually eliminating our combined sewer overflows. Our big pump station at 9 Mile and Jefferson, we have, discharged for years. And now we do treat it so that the E. coli counts are extremely low, and we are permitted by the state to do what we're doing. But seriously, in the Great Lakes state, the environmental, the DEQ, and now it's called EGLE or whatever they are, the Great Lakes Environmental Department.
I never get it right. Eagle, EGLE, I never get it right.
There's no A, so I just say EGLE. But, they permit all of this to happen. And come on, we can do better than this. As I say, we don't have to live this way. So we have made, just in our area, a number of operational changes since I've been there in the last 5 years. We've reduced our CSOs at our pump station there by somewhere in the 30 percentile. We've bid out, about to start construction on something we call in-system storage. I won't go through all the details of that, but it's value engineering in a way that's it's probably going to cost us about $15 to $20 million, but it will, again, reduce the amount of CSOs that we're discharging into the lake by another 30%. Okay, so you got to keep working at this, and we have some other ideas. But, for whatever we discharge in Macomb County, Oakland County discharges 5 times what we do. And Detroit, it's off the charts. I sometimes wonder why Ohio doesn't sue us. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
So, yeah, we need to get a grip on this stuff and stop doing it.
And when you talk about places like Oakland County discharging, I don't think people think about it because Oakland County doesn't touch the Great Lakes, right? But that works through the system, right?
Through the system being Macomb County.
Right.
And I tell my friends in Oakland County, and I have many, you're our great friends. You're our neighbors. We love Oakland County, okay? But many times neighbors don't discharge their sewage on their other neighbor's head. So, they discharge into what we call the Red Run Drain, which is right at DeQuinder, right at the border between Madison Heights and, Warren there, right in Macomb County and Oakland County. It goes down the Red Run Drain into the Clinton River out into Lake St. Clair. So when you're seeing a lot of beach closures or you're seeing all this muck along the lake shore in Lake St. Clair, the stuff is organic, okay? We can all figure out what is happening here.
Yeah,
it has to stop.
Now, I'm going to ask you about Highland Park in a second, but I wanted to touch on a second. You're very pragmatic and practical in your approaches with these things. Is this something that, because I was always amazed that you decided to go for this job and you're definitely embracing it and you're taking an action to it. Where does that pragmatic part come from for you? That very practical where you say, hey, whatever the cause is, this is what I have to deal with. And this is what we have to do. So where does that come from for you?
I don't really know how to answer that question, except I will tell you that I'm a Scot. I come from a long line of soldiers. It's like take the next hill, never give an inch, right? So
Right.
pretty pragmatic about life generally, right?
Right.
But trying to have an impact. And when you say you were sort of amazed I took this job, I know so many people. I mean, when I left the Congress, I was the only chairman of a committee in the House. And I was a vice chair of Homeland Security and a chair of a subcommittee. And of course, in Washington, they usually don't leave unless they lose an election or they take them out on a gurney. Okay,
Right.
Let's be honest. But, I just thought I'd been there long enough. It was time for me to come home. I thought about going into the private sector. I had a lot of opportunities, but really this is sort of what I do. Mm-hmm. And at this stage of my life, I have to tell you the truth, this job has been a perfect nexus for me. But in many ways, at the end of the day, I really feel like I have made an impact that particular day. I don't feel like I'm beating a pillow somewhere in Washington. So I did my thing there. I'm glad we have great leaders that continue to be there, but it was time for me to change direction.
Yeah. A couple things before we go. Highland Park, that's been a conundrum. What do you think we need to do about that?
Well, Highland Park has been forced into the Great Lakes Water Authority as a customer, if you will, because their own water treatment plant did not work and you couldn't feed people that kind of water. The state forced it into the Great Lakes Water Authority, but the Highland Park has not paid their water bills, their water or sewer bills. 10 years this has gone on. And so there's a bit of a mutiny happening with the other customers. It's over 100 other communities. I'll just say this. I recognize the financial challenges that Highland Park has. I totally have it. I got it. But regardless of that, you can take a drive around East Point. That's in Macomb County, and they have a lot of financial challenges as well. Guess what? They get up every day, they go to work, or whatever they're doing, they're paying their water bills. So we just don't feel like we need to walk and others can ride for free. As I say, a bit of a mutiny about that. We just want Highland Park to pay their bills. It doesn't look like they will. And even if we win legally, because there's a judgment right now, they owe us like $54 million. And if they get that judgment against them, which I sort of think they might, let's be honest, where's that money coming from?
Can't get blood from a stone.
You just can't. And so, we've asked the governor to get engaged in this. I mean, this didn't happen under this governor's watch. Happened 10 years ago, but she's the governor now. This is happening. And the state forced this on GLEWA, as we call it. And she also has an appointee on the Great Lakes Water Authority. So I think it's appropriate we just say, look, the state needs to come in and help. I personally think they need an emergency manager. I know that's a bad term anymore because of Flint, but perhaps the legislature could help cobble something together with a team of people. Or look, it can't go on forever. You can't just never pay your bill. But I will also say this. People say, in my communities, they all say, well, just shut their water off. That'll get their attention. That's an easy thing to say, but honestly, there's children there, babies. These are American babies, okay? I mean, they need water. So we have to figure out how we can resolve this issue.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get done here, let's talk about this floatable trash storm thing. I saw a thing online about this. I'm kind of a nerd. I'm like one of those people who watches all the Discovery shows and whatever. Yeah. So what came up with this idea to try to make sure that less stuff gets in the lake? Because that's been a problem, that just trash and people's things just get in there.
People throw a lot of trash around. It just makes you nuts, right? All of us. But we have, like every community, I guess, that live on the lake, we have, for instance, these enormous storm sewers that are like 12-foot, 13-foot diameter. This particular one where we've done this pilot program of the trash capture comes from Roseville, comes down what we call Martin, about 11.5-mile road. It comes down and it discharges into Lake St. Clair. And it is picking up all kinds of debris all the way along the way, whether it's plastic bottles, all kinds of trash, all of that going happily out into Lake St. Clair. So I'm standing there one day watching this stuff. As I say, it makes you crazy, right?
Yeah.
And we're thinking, what can we do? So we started a pilot program with this trash capture. You cannot believe the trash that we are getting out, particularly after a heavy storm, a big rain. I mean, a dumpster full of trash.
Wow,
that
every
is-
time.
Every time that is now not going out into the lake. And so we've piloted this. We're still fine-tuning it because we've had a couple of hiccups, but we're trying to figure it out. And we have a number of, as we call them, outfalls all the way along, in Macomb, all the way along the lake. So if this works there, we intend to replicate it as we can. We're working with our local municipal leaders because, look, I don't have staff to go pick up the trash out of this thing all the time. We're trying to fix other things. But if the locals can help us, maybe we can pay a little bit. And we're all committed, so we're all one big team there about water quality. We think about the lake as the blue economy. Really, whether we are recreating there, whether we're fishing, whether we're boating, or we want to go to the beach and not have the beach
in so
closed.
many ways, it underpins everything about Macomb County. You can look at
Yes.
the crest of the county and all that other stuff.
It's true.
It's that lake, it's that connection to the water is part of what is appealing about Macomb County for people.
Not only that, don't forget, it is our fresh water drinking supply.
Yes.
So let's think about these things. We can't keep spoiling it, that's for sure.
Well, Candice Miller, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for stopping by.
Thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 1000 of Your Daily Detroit. We will be doing a celebratory happy hour June 10th. That's tomorrow at the Congregation, 5 to 8 p.m. With so much gratitude, I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.